Welcome to the AxeCast podcast. Conversations with interesting people from the world of Acadia athletics and more, talking about their lives, successes, and failures. And now let's join hosts Glenn Hawley and Eric Cederberg for the next 15 to 20 minutes as they dive into the life of today's guest.
This week on the AxeCast, it's hard to believe that 5 years has passed since this individual left the court at Acadia University after 5 years with the men's basketball program. Really pleased this week to have Shaquille Smith join us. Shaq, thanks very much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Shaq, as we do with all of our guests, it's sort of like a refresher on how they arrive at Acadia. You grew up in North Preston. How did Acadia get on your radar?
I mean, when I started talking to, it would have been Bauer at the time. You know, obviously he was came knocking on my door looking to recruit me to play basketball for the Axeman. And, you know, as soon as I came down to Wolfville for a visit, I seen the similarities between, you know, my hometown being a small community in North Preston and then obviously the small hometown of Wolfville. So, you know, once I kind of gotten into the community and walked around the campus a little bit and start to meet some of the folks, it seemed like a perfect match right away, just with the small town vibes. And, you know, that's kind of what I'm accustomed to. And I felt right at home as soon as I stepped foot on campus.
Shaq, when you go back to being a little Shaq, do you remember picking up a basketball for the very first time and when it sort of got into your blood?
Yeah, so I would have been probably 12 to 14 years old when I started playing. I actually was first sport was baseball. Baseball was my first sport, it was my primary sport. And then I played that competitively right up until high school. You know, I got selected to play for the Canada Games team for basketball in Nova Scotia. So then at that point, you know, I basically had to make a decision if I wanted to play baseball in the summer or kind of go full time with basketball. And then, you know, from there, you know, I was kind of a dual sport athlete until, you know, once I did go to the Canada Games, we ended up winning a silver medal at the Canada Games. And, you know, obviously the province was pretty proud and had some momentum in basketball. Then after I took a year off from baseball, I never looked back since. So I've basically been submerged in basketball ever since, and the rest was history. So yeah, I was probably about 12 years old, 14 years old around there. And then, you know, I played all the way up until, you know, my fifth year at Acadia is kind of when I stepped away from it and then kind of moved into coaching. So that's kind of how I got into basketball.
When you think about playing, starting at around that age, you know, when you reflect on those years, is there an individual or individuals that you look back and say, you know, I really look up to this mentor, whether it was a coach or a teammate or a family member?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different levels of mentors and coaches that I've kind of met along the way, from, you know, the grassroots level right up until to university. I think for me, the common denominator was kind of the different types of people I met during the time as I was playing basketball and kind of how basketball brought us all together. There's no one particular person. I think it's a community of people that kind of helped me along the way. I think about, you know, my grassroots coaches right from, you know, the North Preston Bulls organization. Then obviously my high school coaches had a significant impact on me. And then even at the university level, you know, the coaches that I had and, you know, Kevin Duffy and Bauer were great mentors. But even outside of that, like some of the people that I met along the way through basketball, you know, like the late great Bruce Finney, like he's been a huge mentor to me. You know, Xavier Joseph, who's a former Acadia alumni as well. He played basketball. I think he graduated in like 03-ish or something like that. So I don't want to age the guy, but I think that's when he graduated. But yeah, no, it's just kind of been a community of mentors that's kind of helped me along the way. And like I said, the common denominator has always been basketball and just meeting great people through basketball. And then once I kind of reached out to people for help in just life, they're always more than willing to jump in and help me out. And yeah, those are the kind of people that kind of came together to help me out.
When you think about your time at Acadia, you know, in the 5 years that you played, I mean, you talked about Coach Bauer and Coach Duffy, but take yourself onto the floor. And are there moments in your career that you reflect on, you know, whether it was a team accomplishment or something individually?
Yeah, I mean, tons of stories. I still talk about all our stories, good and bad, you know, from our basketball playing days at Acadia with some of the guys now. But I mean, the moment that sticks out to me is, you know, my freshman year as a rookie, fresh out of high school, we ended up winning the AUS championship that year. And that was the year that the girls won it as well. So that was the only championship we won. I mean, I think we should have won at least 2 or 3 more based on the team that we have. But, as a rookie, just stepping into from going into high school to university, you really don't know what to expect when you're going there. And then, you get there and it's kind of surreal, and, you're kind of starstruck to kind of see the bright lights and, step on the basketball court and whatnot. And then to actually win a championship that year in your rookie year, that was an amazing experience. And like I said, even with the girls winning the same year, like that celebration was just amazing. And I can still picture the the picture that we took together up on the wall with the girls team and the guys team and both trophies. And I reflect back on some of my teammates that I had in that year, and even the teammates that I met along the way. And like I said, there's so many stories that we just look back at and laugh at, and even the bad stories that kind of happened, whether it was losses or being punished for something, and like we just laugh at those stories now, and it all kind of brings us together. And those are stories that we're going to have for life. So those are some of the moments that I think about the most. And even like looking back at like just traveling with the team on the bus and just being, most of the teammates that I had, like I only had one person that I grew up with. That was AJ Simmons, who I played with, and the rest of them, they were all strangers to me at one point. And then I kind of reflect back and see how close I became with them just from traveling all the time and going through wins and losses together and stuff like that. It's amazing to think that, all of that kind of happened because we ended up at Acadia together, and they're relationships that we're going to have for a lifetime.
When I think of the pillars that Acadia Athletics stands on, academics, athletics, community, you check all the boxes. And in 2016, you're recognized as the AUS Student Athlete Community Service Award winner. That whole giving to the community, where does that come from, Shaq?
I think it comes from, well, I feel like just helping people is like one of those purposes that I feel like I have to serve in my life. Like I just enjoy helping people. But I think, it comes from seeing other people open doors for me or sharing information with me or helping me through different areas of my life. And I know how that allowed me to kind of break other barriers. So it's kind of like one of those things where you understand the power that it can have because, it's the same thing that is allowing you to grow. And I use mentors and people support me every day. So it's just one of those things like, if I truly believe if I go through something and, I keep it to myself, or I get over this barrier and I don't really share like what I was going through at the time, or I don't try to help anybody else, like there's no power in that. I think the real power is, understanding that, you yourself are going to, you're going to make mistakes along the way. There's going to be challenges that you make along the way, but how you got through those challenges and sharing what you did to go through those challenges is going to help somebody else to be motivated, and it's going to help somebody else navigate their life a little bit better to not make those challenges. So for me, it was just all about, I always reflect and I look back at, how transparent people were with me, how different mentors in my life helped me and kind of went above and beyond to help me. And I know what it did for me. So I always just try to, any opportunity that I can to, share any of the pitfalls that I had along my career, whether that be basketball wise, academically, whatever. I try to be an open book for the younger generation because I truly believe like that one of the strongest powers is the sharing of information and the access to information. And the more information I learn along the way, the more I want to share with the youth, especially from my community, just so they can kind of, use that information to navigate the life however they want to.
But I was going to mention that it kind of leads us to some of the stuff that you're doing now, where you've, with the Futures program, have decided to, be that mentor. And is that your experience from here, and then kind of translating to wanting to help others out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I kind of reflected like after I was done school, when I graduated Acadia, in retrospect, it all seems like, I mean, from some of the younger guys looking up to me, from my community or just at the sport community, and even graduating with a business degree and getting the community service award winner, it all looks like it was all roses and success along the way. But, you know, there were so many challenges that I went through academically, and I was always a good student academically. But it's a different dynamic when you have to balance athletics and the pressure of athletics and wanting to win, and you add the academic side into it. And then also you're growing up at the same time, right? Like, you know, going into university, you're an 18 to 24-year-old kid or 25-year-old kid at the time. For me, I had a lot of growing up to do, and a lot of it was prioritizing and setting a schedule and just kind of being disciplined on certain things. And there's a lot of things that I did wrong, but in the end of it, it kind of looks like I was just successful along the way because I graduated and I got these awards at the end. So I feel like kids didn't really understand the nature of what to expect going into university. So I just took a step back and I looked at like, what were some of the challenges that I had along the way, and how can I just be open and honest and share those challenges? I mean, I had financial challenges, I had academic challenges, I had personal challenges, all of those things. But like I said, there's no power in me going through those challenges and me having to, you know, use mentors and pull myself up to get through those challenges, because then people are kind of looking at my success, and I'm primarily from my community where I'm from. Like they just always thought I had it figured out. They thought it was always success, and I don't want to give them that false sense of security that it is going to be just okay. I want to be real and be like, you're going to struggle, like you're going to have challenges, and that's okay. It's about what you do in those struggling times. So in terms of the Futures program, a lot of it stems from my own personal experience. You know, it started off as me understanding that my community, North Preston, didn't have a basketball court in our community. So I fundraised money to rebuild the basketball court to give them access to that. And then after I started, campaigning for that, I started talking to other student athletes outside of basketball, outside of my community, just in the broader province, and just asking them like, what type of challenges have you faced as a student athlete? And it's funny because, I come from a predominantly Black community. And I always think that like a lot of these challenges are specific to me. But when I talk to some student athletes about some of their challenges that they face in university, they all had some type of varying challenges that I had. So I kind of seen that as a similarity. And you know what, like maybe this isn't, a Shaq issue, or this isn't a North Preston issue. Maybe it's a student athlete issue. So, once I kind of got down that rabbit hole, I started talking to student athletes and whatnot, and kind of hearing them out and, kind of downloading some of their pitfalls and where they made some missteps. And, I think, 2 or 3 years later, here we are now. We got a Futures program. It's we do summer basketball, but we integrate a lot of educational programming into our programs. A lot of it stems from, finding your purpose in life outside of a student athlete. Because for me, what I seen as a big barrier and what I went through was I didn't know how to identify myself outside of a basketball player or just an athlete. So once I graduated and I got that degree and it was time for me to go find a job, I didn't even know where to start because all I knew was basketball. So for me, our program is all about, allowing kids to use basketball the way they want to use it, kind of finding that purpose in their life. So when basketball is not there for them, they have some kind of hobbies or interests outside of sport to, kickstart their career in whatever direction they want to go. So that's a little bit about, how my experience kind of fueled where we're at right now with the Futures program.
With your experiences that you've had in university, what would be the one thing that universities, I'm not going to isolate Acadia, but every university needs to do to help out a student athlete in that transition? Or maybe not even necessarily transition, but getting through those 4 years.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, in my opinion, in my opinion, like, and this is why our program kind of stems back to like, what is your purpose in life, right? And again, we kind of talked about it earlier, like the reason why I do so much in the community, and even the job that I have, like everything that I do in my life, I try to find out if it serves my purpose in the grand scheme of things, because then you feel like you're actually progressing and you're moving somewhere in your life. I think in university, there's a whole lot of soul searching that happens. There's a whole lot of subject matters. There's curriculums. There's, they're assessing you on marks and performance and all that. But for me, the big piece that was missing was what is my purpose, right? Like, so for our program, for example, what we're doing is we're taking you outside of an athlete. We're taking you outside of a subject. Like, so we're not looking at math. We're not looking at English. We're not looking at these subjects. We're looking at like, what are your hobbies? What do you love to do? How can you make money off of them? How can you make the world a better place with them? And that kind of balls up into your purpose, right? So, I actually did the exercise myself, and I like I said, I boiled it down to my purpose is helping people. So now when I take a step back and I look at my life and I'm evaluating, what's going good in my life or what's going bad in my life, I can look at my purpose and say, okay, is your purpose, are you helping people? I'm in recruitment. So I'm helping people find jobs every day. There's a rewarding factor to that where, like, somebody's maybe in a tough spot in their job and they're looking for a change, and they get a new job and they get new money and more money or a new opportunity, whatever. And you genuinely feel like you're helping people. So for me, there's a rewarding factor, and it also pays my bills. All right. So it's like, it's really trying to find that, that mix of activities in your life that serves your purpose. I didn't know what my purpose was through university. I don't want to say I floated through university, but I've graduated university with a business degree. And at the end of it, I still didn't know what I want to do. I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know what my direction was, and I was lost. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me, because at the end of it, we're all told, graduate, things are going to kind of work itself out, and which they did. But it's like, I would have much rather try to do a little bit more of soul searching of what my purpose is in university in real time. And I think that could have kind of helped me navigate through a little bit better. I could have probably made better choices on what classes I took and all that type of stuff. There were some classes that I just took because I needed an easy class or something like that. And, reflecting back, that may not have been the best use of my time. So, yeah, that's some of I'd say my learnings in university. I mean, that's such a loaded question that I can go on for days, but I think it all needs to stem back to, what your purpose is in life and how do you achieve that through university.
And you know what, when you figure out what that purpose is, you also need to have, you need to be fulfilled and know that that purpose is actually making an impact. So, you think about the Futures program and you think about the basketball court as a good example. Are you able to sit back now, look at that project and see the use that it's, or the impact that it's having on the community? So you sit back and say, I understand now what my purpose in life is about giving back. Like, do you see the true impacts that project is having on your community?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the worst for this, but I have a very short memory when it comes to, celebrating positive things. And I also have a short memory when it comes to, dwelling on the past. So, I mean, sometimes I even forget about the basketball court project because I'm already on to the next thing and how can I improve the next process, whatever. But, it was a really, I felt that impact moment when we did the grand opening of the court. We did a whole ribbon cutting ceremony, and there was a bunch of youth there, and McDonald's as the presenting sponsor, they were there, and there was a basketball game happening on the court, and I envisioned this as just being a basketball court in the community, and it ended up turning into this huge project where it was a full-size basketball court with a brand new parking lot and parking spaces and blah blah blah. Like, I don't know if you would have seen the community center before, but there was nothing there but a basketball court. It was all gravel. So, every time I kind of drive by there or walk by there, I kind of have a sense of pride in knowing that I had something to do with that. But when you see the kids out there playing on it every day, and when we had that grand opening ceremony, that was a proud moment for me, just because I know, like, I kind of look at it as like that court's probably going to outlive me, which is, crazy to think about every now and then. But for me, I honestly don't think about it too much, because I still see the youth that we have in our program now. And right now, my priority is like, how can we help them, navigate through university better? How can we help them get jobs after university? How can we get them back on the court playing basketball this summer with COVID kind of taking a step back on everything? So yeah, I have a very short memory when it comes to, success moments and kind of, pitfalls, but I do have those moments where I just sit back and I appreciate some of the progress that I made in some of these areas.
I think what makes me appreciate it even more, Shaq, is there's not too many, and you would have started that project in your mid-20s. There's not too many people at that stage in their life that are, leading a project where they're going to fundraise $300,000, and do something that's going to impact the community. So, take it from somebody who's a fundraiser and a lot older than Shaq Smith. Like, to me, that's where I, just looking at the story and sort of being on the outside looking in, I think, wow, somebody in his mid-20s that's leading this project and having this impact at that stage in their life, I think is a huge story. I know you're a quiet leader and you're probably not much for all of the, Shaq this and Shaq that, but truly, that's how I feel. That's how I felt when I read the story.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, a lot of it was like, that project's been on my brain since I was probably like second, third year university. And it kind of goes back to some of those mentors that are around me, right? So I just kind of I just started talking about it, right? I put it out there in the universe, and the mentors that I had around me were like, well, what are we waiting for, right? Like what's stopping you? Like, there's really nothing that's stopping you. And, once I started the process, and I didn't know anything about fundraising when I started. I didn't know anything about who owned the land on the basketball court. I didn't know who should I go to in terms of the politicians to talk to get approval from the government or the city or whatever. But I just kind of asked the questions and asked for help, people to point me in the direction. And there were days where I was like, you know what, I'm pulling the plug. It's not going to work. I don't know how I'm going to come up with 300,000. And eventually people pointed me in the direction of grants, and I had no experience with grant writing, but I just figured it out. I told the story, I told my story, and eventually I just kind of stayed persistent, and I kept drilling it. Like, it wasn't like a year worth of work and it just came together. It was probably like, 2.5 years of me just kind of trying to figure things out. And then once I got close and I had enough momentum, and then once the press picks it up, then, the sponsorships basically, they find themselves at that point. So it was definitely a challenge. I learned a lot along the way, but I think, a lot of the credit has to go to just some of those mentors that I had around me to be like, you got a vision, put it out in the universe and just try to get it. And the worst case scenario, you're going to fail and the court's not going to happen. Best case scenario, you pull it off and there's a court there. And I was fortunate enough to have people around me to support me enough, like I keep saying, just to help me through the process and grow through the process. And that's just kind of the way I approach life. If I don't know the answer, we can figure it out. We got devices in our hands and we can Google what we need to do. And I'm a big fan of just trying to find out the answer. So.
Question I have, Shaq, being as young as you are, what's the next project? You got something in your mind right now you're thinking about, or what?
I want to really get the Futures program to a place where it's kind of runs without me, right? As one, it kind of feels like we're a nonprofit organization, but it feels like a startup business. Nonprofits are businesses too. But like, the Futures program is kind of at the point now where, like, if I'm busy with work or, I try to take vacation with my family or whatever, with the little ones, then the Future program stops, right? I want to get to a place where it just runs without me, and I have the vision on where I want to go, and we got a board of directors as well that kind of all come from very different athletic backgrounds and challenges and educators and stuff like that. So for me, the big project is really getting that structure in place and letting this program run without me kind of running the day to day. And then, bigger picture, I would love for us to have our own, basketball facility one day. So, Lynn, I know you said that you were a fundraiser, so I might need you to come help out on this campaign for a couple of years down the road. But yeah, I just, those are some of the things that are kind of on my wish list right now.
Well, look what you got done in 5 years or so.
Yeah.
You got to work for that facility.
Well, I'm sort of glad that you've reflected the way you have on your experience at Acadia, because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the statistics, the academic all Canadians and the championships and the individual athletic accomplishments and stuff. But as you'll remember, Shaq, when Ray Ivany was the president during your time as a student athlete, he was all about Acadia is a place where we turn out great people. And you're one of those great people that we've turned out. And I can tell you, your alma mater is extremely proud of what you've done. And to think that you're not even 30 yet and you've got a lot of things to come, we're excited to watch where life takes you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's actually funny that you brought up Ray Ivany, because, what he did, and this was always a key moment for me, is when I graduated, my graduating class, I don't know if he did this for every graduating class or just our graduating class, but he stops and he has a conversation with everybody that walks across the stage and asks them, what are you going to do next? And, the thing that I told him that I was going to do next was rebuild the basketball court in my community. So that always kind of sat in the back of my mind, because I was like, I told President Ivy that I was going to do it. So when things got tough, you gotta, like you said, you put it out in the universe, you got to do it. So, that kind of, just to see him, and that just goes back to the kind of leader that, I have appreciation for at Acadia, that he was, to sit there and stop and talk to every single person that's walking across the stage during convocation is it's amazing, and ask them what they're doing next. And you can tell he genuinely listened and he was interested. So, I just, when you brought him up, that was the first thing I thought about. So I just wanted to say that, because he's just such a great guy, and you're just motivated around a guy like that. So he did a lot for my career, probably more than he even knows. So I just overall I always look back, I appreciate my Acadia experience, and I always feel like I'm a Wolfville boy at heart always, and Acadia always has that special place for me, for sure.
Well, it's been great doing this. Appreciate you doing it. And the next time we have a capital project in athletics, we're calling you for guidance. So
likewise, same here.
Thanks, Shaq.
All right, thank you. You guys have a good one.